Hi friends, welcome back to part 2, painting a beautiful landscape. We did the sky, it turned out really lovely. Let me show you how we got on with this. This is my sky and it turned out really nice. Now you could use this sky for anything else. You could use this just as it is and perhaps add just some grass or something and maybe a single tree. That would look quite nice, wouldn't it? So there are lots of things that you could use the sky for. You don't necessarily have to copy this tutorial. It's just a nice experiment. Very happy with that. Okay, we've part 2 coming up, and we turn this again. Painting lots of, let me fix this. The lighting is not great on this camera, to be quite honest. It's just something to do with the lighting in the studio. Okay, part 2, cottage, foliage, a little bit of water. We're going to have a lot of fun with this. I thought I'd mention also I'm going to start doing Zoom tutorials one-to-one. I know I said it before that I was going to start doing group tutorials. I did it for a while, but it was a lot of effort and it just went on and on. It was just too long, do you know what I mean? Focusing on groups and trying to get everybody to kind of work at the same pace, that kind of thing. So I'm going to start doing one-to-one tutorials, okay? Online, just me and you. Take your time, maybe 60 minutes, and we'll paint something nice, whatever you like. So the links will be there. You'll see the link. Just send me an email if you're interested, and we'll set up a nice little Zoom just for 2 of us. All right? I think it'll be nice just to connect with people that way. You know what I mean? And give it that little extra bit of help along the way if you're stuck with anything in particular. So that's my thinking going forward. Anyway, more importantly, let's move on to this lovely painting. I'm looking forward to just getting my teeth into this landscape. It's really lovely. So don't go anywhere, grab your stuff if you want to follow me along. Again, thank you so much for all your support, and if you want to support me, just Patreon, click on the link at the end of the video. It takes you to Patreon. There are lots of extra private tutorials there, in depth, just like this, okay? I'm sure you'll find something there that interests you, and we can chat and all that kind of stuff. So thank you so much, and do subscribe, okay? Don't forget to click that subscribe button and the bell button as well, so you get notified of my tutorials all the time. Okay, grab your stuff and let's paint here, and let's get this finished. And well, we try and get it finished. If not, we might do a part 3, but I want to take my time and do it nicely so you can follow me along. Take your time and have a bit of fun along the way. Okay, don't go anywhere. Okay, part 2. Now you can see the photographs there, and that lovely. I'm going to start with just putting some distant hills in the background here, just to break up that horizon line, okay? So we have a nice dark in between the water and the sky, okay? Right, let me see now what brush will I use for this. I'm just going to go with a medium kind of a flat brush. And by the way, I'm selling my stubby brushes again, so if you're interested in getting those stubby brushes, the link is there in the description, okay? I'll start selling them again and see if I can have better luck this time with the postage. Now, I must get some titanium white for my palette. I have all the same colours on my palette. I haven't changed anything. One colour I haven't used is this dioxine purple. I don't think I need it, to be quite honest. I thought I was going to use it for the sky, but you can get a lot of colours just from 2 or 3 colours, okay? Now, let's dampen the brush and dry it. It's only a damp brush. I'm going to put in a very light distant hill off there in the distance. It's a nice warm colour. I'm going to use burnt sienna. Little burnt sienna, and let me see now, some Naples Yellow to make that nice and sort of creamy and pasty. Okay, would you agree? Plenty of Naples Yellow. That should give us a nice warm colour for a distant hill off in the distance where the sun is kind of showing through. Now I'm not going to copy exactly what's there, okay? I'm just going to make my own interpretation of it. Perhaps I might add a touch of burnt umber, just a touch on the tip of the brush, because it's a good idea just to have like a kind of a dark against light type of a feeling. Do you understand what I mean? And then under that, I'm going to take some burnt umber, and I'm going to take a hint of black, a tiny hint of black. Okay? It's a very coffee kind of a colour. I'm just going to go in under that and suggest a row of, say, trees or something like that off in the distance. It comes up a little bit then, doesn't it? It's just a very loose suggestion, that's all. You see, I'm just dabbing with the tip of my brush. And that gives you a nice kind of dark line then, doesn't it? And then I'm going to darken it very dark with some black and some cadmium red. Okay? Black and cadmium red and a hint of sienna. Just to keep the colours kind of similar, but a darker version of that colour. Let's just start here, work our way across, and then it goes up and gets dark, doesn't it? It's just to give something in the distance, that's all. Just to break that horizon line. That's all, nothing else. Then I'll take more sienna and give it a bit of warmth. Suggest a little row of trees kind of up there. You can see there's little trees up there, isn't there? And I will add to this, don't worry. I'm just breaking up the edge very, very slightly. Okay, and what I'm going to do then is just clean the tip of the brush. Give it a good clean on some tissue, okay? Just get all that paint off. I'm going to just soften some of this back into the kind of the background here, just to make it that little bit softer, okay? That's all. So it's not a complete solid line, do you understand? Now we could go up a bit here and there, so it's not a completely straight line. That's the thing with landscapes, especially this type of a landscape. I see a lot of beginners kind of make this mistake. They just kind of go straight with a line. But nature is not kind of straight and like that. It's very unpredictable, so it goes up and down, go up into the hills, look right up even into the sky here and there if you want. And that just helps give it a more natural kind of a feeling. Do you understand? Now, I'm going to go very dark with this one here. I'm going to take some black, and I'm even going to take a touch of cadmium yellow, okay? So it's a very blacky green, because that's just a nice kind of a silhouette just there, okay? And look, we can leave it at that. That's really all we need. I'm going to, with a pencil, if I can find a pencil here now, just indicate the river bank coming around here, okay? So it kind of comes down like that, and then it turns and comes out of the painting like that, okay? So we only have a little bit of water. That's all, a tiny little bit. And I'm just going to paint the bank, okay? I'm going to just mix a nice green first for that river bank. And I need to get some cadmium yellow pale. Cadmium yellow pale. So we're going to start going into some warm greens, okay? And, you know, looking at the photograph from a beginner's point of view, or even an amateur, you would say, okay, it's a green. But there are lots of different types of greens. There are cold greens and warm greens, and I'm going to make a nice warm green with this. Just take some cadmium yellow pale, a little of the black, and then burnt sienna, and that gives you a beautiful warm green, okay? Particularly for a sunset. Let's take a bit more sienna. That will warm it really nicely. I'm just going to go along the edge there, just for now. Just fill that in, and even softening it into the trees behind, okay? So, because this is so far away, you're not going to have definite lines. You're not going to see, you know, actual little separate fields and all that kind of thing. Just kind of allow it to mix into the paint that's already there. Now I'm going to mix a bit more, and take a touch of thinners just to thin that ever so slightly, okay? A tiny amount. That just helps the paint move around and mix a bit easier. A little bit more yellow, and it's slightly brighter as it comes around, okay? As you can see, look, I'm just putting this in very lightly, and even just soften it back over into some of that, okay? And let's just fill this in. I'm going to sketch my cottage in just a moment, but I just wanted to get this background hilly area done before I continue on. Do you know what I mean? Okay, now we have some nice little reeds and trees just in the distance there. I'm simply going to take some burnt sienna and a little Naples Yellow, okay? I'm not going to mix them. You see that on my brush? It's just, let me make sure this camera is actually recording. It is. Just a little bit of both on my brush, and I'm simply going to just dab, okay? And that just gives you an impression of some nice trees, that kind of stuff, off in the distance. You can even go up here and suggest a few. very, very sort of random, okay? Then I'm going to take a hint of black. You can use a smaller brush for this now if you like, okay? And just along the base, just with a couple of hairs at the corner of the brush, just suggest a little bit of darkness here and there. Okay? It's for no particular reason, it's just to encourage a little bit of detail. That's all, but it's not really, really detail. It's just your mind will fill in the blanks. And I find that's the trick with painting, is to encourage the viewer to fill in the blank spaces and say, well, yeah, it could be a field, it could be a little row of trees, it could be this or that. It's just to encourage you to look deeper into the painting, that's all, rather than just having a simple green colour going across. Now, that's pretty fine. I'm going to take a touch of Naples Yellow and just give a little tiny highlight on the fronts of some of these, okay? And what I'm going to do is take a very small flat brush and just suggest some light hitting one of these little fields, okay? Just with some cadmium yellow and a little white, okay? And let's pick this one here, for instance. I'm just going to put a hint of it across, as if it's just hitting one of those fields. Maybe a touch here underneath those bushes, you see? Now, doesn't that give a nice light on the hill? Maybe a touch back there. So you can see now, it looks like separate little fields off in the distance. I'm not going to go any further now with that. I want to just keep that simple. I'm going to sketch my cottage. You see, is this pencil working? Yes, pencil is working okay. So I'm going to come down here and just give a very rough sketch of the cottage, okay? It comes right over here, doesn't it? We have a line here. We have a line here. Just roughly, okay? It doesn't have to be perfect. Up round about our horizon line here, and we'll come down like this, and we'll come down like this. Then, now, this is important, okay? To create perspective in your painting, everything goes away at an angle, okay? But they're different angles because they're coming towards a point. Let's say the point is over here in the center, okay? So the lines are going to go to the center, like this. So that line is going to go that direction. Then the top line, if you look closely at the photograph, even if you get like a piece of paper or a pencil or something, you'll notice the top of the roof falls very slightly like this, doesn't it? And that creates the perspective. Now it's almost horizontal, from what I can see. Almost, okay? It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Then I'm going to paint, or just draw this line here. And then all the vertical lines will always be vertical, okay? Always vertical. And then it widens as it comes back this way then, slightly, okay? Ever so slightly. So now we have a nice perspective of a cottage turned, going off into the distance. Isn't that lovely? I have a little bush here. I can sketch that in roughly. And I'm not going to worry about all of this. We can fill this in as we go. So that's it. Let's paint around all of this. Get all this done here. And get up there done. I'm going to paint that. It's simply a nice green, nice rich green. Cadmium yellow pale, a little black. And a lot of beginners say to me, how does black and yellow make green? That's probably the easiest way to make a nice rich green. If you use blue and yellow, it's a very cold green. Black and yellow is a more natural green because black has blue pigments in it anyway. Okay? You can see that? It's not a lovely rich olive kind of a green. Perfect, look, perfect. You can use greens out of the tube if you like. I don't particularly like using greens from the tube because I've just become accustomed to mixing the greens myself, okay? It just gives you a much better variety of greens when you mix them yourself on the palette, all right? It just makes a big difference. You can get a lot more varieties. Now I'm going to take a hint of cobalt blue with the black, okay? Just to cool it slightly, and it's going to get kind of darker as it comes down. Okay, just like that. And I'm simply just dabbing my brush side to side and allowing that then to kind of fizzle off and gently fade off up into that green up there. And I'm hardly touching the canvas, look, just barely touching the canvas. So now we have a nice gradient from a light kind of a down to a dark. Isn't that lovely? And particularly behind the cottage, I'll take a hint of burnt umber in that, and I'm just going to paint in behind there because there's a lovely shadow in there, isn't there? Let's just fill that in, and again allow that to sort of disappear up. Now it lightens as it comes around here, so again let's just take some yellow into that and let's start lightening it as it comes around. My brush, by the way, is quite dry. I just have a lot of paint on my brush and I'm scraping it across. I take a bit more yellow and encourage a little bit of light just hitting this side. And it's basically really just to create some texture on the grass. You see what I mean? Little mounds of grass here and there. So it's not just a solid colour all the way across. Put a piece through the shade as well. And that's a nice rich green, isn't it? Now I want to go around the side of my canvas because if you watched part 1, I was saying I'm going painting around the edges of the canvas. So while I have this colour, a nice thin colour, I'm just going to go along the edge of the canvas as well, okay? Just with that thin colour. Now I need to just pop my head over to the side here. I don't know if you can see my bald patch or not. I do apologise if you can. I'm getting old, I'm pushing on in my years and my hair is getting very thin, unfortunately. But I don't mind. A lot of people find that very irritating and they don't like seeing their hair getting thin. I really don't mind. Life is too short to worry about those kind of things. Isn't that right? Now, a little bit more, just there, and we're good. Okay, that's the side of the canvas painted. Now, let's, where we go now, where we go? Let's crack on and get just this finished. Well, not finished, but let's just get this filled in here, around the front of the cottage. As we have green on our brush, we might as well. Isn't that right? Because we can be forever trying to get green out of our brush, trying to clean it. It just takes so long. And I'm just going to thin this out. It's a nice warm green. So lamp black, my apologies. Lamp black, cadmium yellow and a hint of burnt sienna. And that will give us a nice warm green. See? For sunset you want to keep the colours warm. Well, it's not a sunset in particular, like a sunsetty sky, but the sun is off. There's nice warm colours showing in the grass, etc. So warm colours, keep everything nice and warm. It's much easier, I suppose, to keep your colours warm at the beginning. If you want to cool them down, you can cool them down very easily with a touch of blue. But I would, for this type of a scene, I'd always paint nice warm yellows and greens. It's quite easy then to tone them down if you feel they're too warm. And just fill this in, just so we get a little bit of area covered in, okay? Bit more yellow, a touch of sienna. Lovely warm colour. And this will give me a nice lovely base then to work on. So I can then soften different colours through all of this. Soften it in there, look, just pull that out a little. Already we have wonderful warm green. Isn't that lovely? To complement that warm sky. Right, let me take a look now and see where we're going to go from here. I think I'll do the water next. I'm going to pick up my clean brush, which I had yesterday for my sky. There's still a tiny bit of blue in this, but that's fine. I'm going to paint a nice soft colour for this. Looking at the reference photograph, I'm thinking Naples Yellow, a touch of crimson, and even that might suffice. Maybe a touch more Naples Yellow. We just fill that in for now. So it's a warmer version of what's up in the sky, okay? That's all. It's a warmer version. And you can see this is quite thin, isn't it? Now I'm going to soften that off into those very gently, look. Try and get it somewhat straight. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. Then as it comes down, it goes into a lovely mauve colour. So I'm going to take a hint of cobalt blue. I won't use phaylo because phaylo will be too overpowering. Cobalt blue, a little crimson, and let's go for a little white, okay? But I'm keeping this more on the pink side. There's a lot more pink than there is blue. Okay? Now even a hint of black, I think. Just so that it's not so purple. Let me take a hint more white. In fact, a touch of burnt umber. And that will just tone down the colour slightly. Let's just fill that in there. And you can see I'm using a very dry brush. I'm kind of scrubbing this into the canvas. I don't want too much paint on my canvas because it's very difficult to control if there's too much paint on it. Okay? Just go up there like that. And I'm going to soften it across. Then I'm going to move to horizontal brush strokes like this, okay? Isn't that lovely? Now I'll just dampen my brush ever so gently again. And I'm going to mix a little bit more of that colour. Cobalt blue, crimson, a hint of burnt umber. And the burnt umber will just help neutralise the purple tone. It just kind of tones down the mauve a little, just a little, to make it a bit more natural. Okay, there we go. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to give a little bit of shadow up here because there's a lovely dark shadowed area up there from those trees, or just a row of trees or something. I'm just going to take some burnt umber and some black, and I'm just going to go up there and pull across. It could even be like a little bank of land or something that's over there off in the distance. So I'm just going to pull that across like that, very gently, over to a point, and then I'm going to give it a little reflection. I'm just going to sort of pull that down. Very gently, look. And it's just an impression of perhaps a land of some sort over there. Just to break up this corner. Do you understand what I mean? That's all, just to break it up a little. And maybe put a little bit of black through the center, just like that, just to create the impression of, I don't know, some trees or something like that. It's just to add a bit of interest over there. Now, I'm going to go to my pointy brush next. We find a nice pointy brush. There we go. And I'm going to take some nice bright colour. I'm going to take some white, some Naples yellow, touch of cadmium yellow. Now my cadmium yellow is very dirty, so I'm going to just scrape this off with my knife. Okay, I'll get rid of that with some tissue, and I'm going to put some clean yellow on my palette. It's a good idea to keep your yellows nice and clean, otherwise you'll start picking up some greens, and you don't want that. A tiny hint of yellow, okay? And I'm just going to go up here and add a little touch of light here and there. It's just really, I suppose, to create some ripples in the water, just to make it look like water and look like reflections. Just going to pull one or through those, just through like that, okay? And it's just really to break up the water, I suppose, just so that it's not a flat colour, okay? I'm very gently just doing this, very, very gently. I think that just looks a little bit better, doesn't it? And I can see that on the photograph. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's a very shallow lake, and you can almost see little bits of stones or something, seaweed maybe or something like that, showing through. So I'm just going to use a very dark grey, and I'm going to just take it like this and sort of flick it back. Okay. Let me just see if I can mix a little bit more colour now. And there's a couple of these things around. They just kind of flick backwards, don't they? Pull them back with the finger just slightly, okay, just to soften them back in. And then I'm going to take a nice bright colour, clean my brush, take maybe a hint of white or something, and just go around some of those. And you can hardly even see the paint I'm using. It's very, very thin. I'm just adding a touch of light to some of those, that's all. And it just gives the impression of something out in the water, that's all. You know, you could even just soften them in with your finger, and it just gives something. Now we have as well a tiny reflection of some dark trees up here, which I can see quite clearly. It's quite lovely actually. So I'm just going to first go along the edge of the bank just like that, just to define that edge just a little bit more. Then I'm going to give it some nice tiny reflections, okay? I'm just going to pull. Just like that, okay? Very gently. Then I go across with a little tiny bit of black on my tiny little brush here, and just add a tiny bit of definition across here and there and some of those, okay? The tiniest little bit, just to define the river bank, only a little. That's probably even too much now. You don't have to go to this length of trouble if you don't want to, okay? I just want to go into a lot of detail with this painting, and that's fine, okay? That will do absolutely fine. Just going to soften it upwards. There, okay? I'm going to move on, I think, to that big tree, that big lovely tree up here. I need to find a nice brush for this. I need a nice small round, but not something too small. Okay, there we go. That's not bad. I've so many brushes, but a lot of them are quite worn, you see. I'll take perhaps a new one. How about this lovely new pointy brush, a number 1? And I'll start with a slightly warm one, just for the tree trunks. I'm going to make this nice and warm, okay? So a nice warm tree. I'm going to start with the tree trunk first. Some burnt umber and a little black, okay? Lots of thinners in this. I have tons and tons of thinners in this. It's almost like a watercolour. And we can just kind of, I suppose, make this our own, can't we? Let's just go up, pop in that, and because the canvas was quite dry initially, you can see it sort of dragging on the grain. So add plenty of turpentine. And bear in mind, a lot of this will be covered with foliage in a moment. So you don't have to go crazy with all of this. I will be picking out the tree trunks again later, alright? This is just really to get the initial tree trunk painted, and we go from there. Just little flicks with the brush here and there. I'm sure you've painted trees like this before. It's just nice and simple. Because you can see little bits poking through, can't you? And I'm going to go up nice and high with some of these. And again, I'll be painting over a lot of this, so don't worry too much. Don't be too particular with all of this at all. I'm going to bring a nice thick one out this way. More paint, a little bit of burnt umber. Couple of little flicks, nice and simple. And perhaps then I'll take a little bit of black and I'll just darken the left side of some of those. There we go. Now that's fine. Shall we try some foliage? I'm going to use the sky brush, okay? This very rough brush, because this seems like it's the right one for the job. So I'm basically going to start with a darker colour. I'm going to take, with a dry brush, some burnt umber. I have decent power left on my battery. I just keep checking the camera to make sure I have enough battery power. It's a good idea because it gives me no warning whatsoever, it just shuts off. Okay, burnt umber, and let me see now, what could we do? A nice warm colour here. You could just say burnt umber, but there's a little something else there. Perhaps a hint of crimson. A tiny hint of black. So I'm going to start with the slightly darker colours. Okay, bit more crimson. And with this on my brush, I'm going to start creating the shape, the canopy of the tree. And again, this is the darker shade. Okay, I'll be adding some lights to this very soon. Just creating the shape of the foliage with this. And I'm turning the brush as I go, you see. And it is a very dry brush. There is lots of foliage on this, so don't be shy. Okay, add plenty of it, but one of the problems I see, especially with beginners, is that they tend to just go everywhere like this, and they just keep going and going and going, and eventually it just looks like a big blob of paint, and you've different, you know, it's very wet, it looks very wet and messy. So the trick really is to use a tiny amount of paint on the tip of your brush, okay, no thinners, and just go in sections like this, you see, because with trees you'll have one section behind the other. If you just paint it in one big blob, it just looks like completely flat colour. So it's a good idea to paint it in sections. Just take your time, paint it in sections. If you feel, okay, I could go a little bit more here, just go a little bit more. And it just works, I find. It's a much easier way of painting trees for me. And stagger your layers, you see. One can be dark, one can be light. I'll even take a hint of cadmium red, because I can see some nice red in some of those. You see, pop a little bit of red in here and there, where it might be catching the light. And I'm not copying exactly what I see, okay? I'm just painting my interpretation of it, that's all. Let's add a bit more here. So what I do then, you see, is I can use my lights to create the different areas on the tree. I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. So I'm going to just give this a quick clean, dip it in some thinners, give it a wipe on some tissue. It doesn't have to be spotless. I'm then going to take some burnt sienna and some Naples Yellow. Okay? Burnt sienna, Naples Yellow, maybe a touch of cadmium yellow. That will give us a nice bright colour, but not being too luminous. It's a nice warm colour. Okay, you can see my brush, it's very worn, it's very soft. Let me zoom in here for you. You see that? It's very splayed out. I'm going to just start hitting some lights on this. Tiny, tiny lights. Just on the left side of some of these. Because again, the sun is coming from the left. Okay? So it's going to be just hitting sort of the outside edges of some of these. And you don't have to go crazy with this. I'm going to give it some nice ones around here, just to break up the tree trunks nicely. A little there, soften it back. So I think that's a nice tree, don't you? I think that's a lovely tree. You see, you don't have to overdo this at all. Then what I'm going to do is take some nice bright, that bright colour even, you could take some of that and pop some of that on some of the tree trunks. Just to suggest the sun catching some of the tree trunks through that foliage, okay? Up there, maybe a hint of it there. Now isn't that lovely? A lovely warm tree. You could go a bit darker. Now we do have a big bush here coming down in front of the roof. I'm going to leave that. I'm not sure if that helps the painting. So I think what I'll do next is get some of this grass finished. Alright, so I'm going to mix a nice dark green now. Not too dark. Let's take some cadmium yellow, a little black, and I'll go for a little burnt umber this time. Okay, a fairly dry brush. I'm just going to start adding a little texture here and there, okay? First, you see? All I'm doing is dabbing. Dab, 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 dab. Now let's darken that slightly. It needs to be a little bit darker. I'm going to go over here and start putting some of that dark in here and there. And you can also do the flicking technique, okay? Look, little flicks. The brush. I'll paint under this later, okay? I'll paint under all of this canvas later on, just around the edges. I'll finish that off later. We could suggest a bit of a pat in a moment. So what I'll do is, I'll just get a piece in here first, like that. Then I'm going to sort of turn down where it starts hitting the light, okay? I'll take some cadmium yellow and a little Naples yellow, and I'm just going to start turning the grass a little bit. And then perhaps create this little mound, you can see. Come across here. So you can see I'm just sort of merging all these lovely colours together. Now I'm going to start using a fan brush for a change, because I know how you love to use the fan brush for this kind of stuff, and it's so easy to use, it really is. Okay, a normal fan brush, I'll dampen that, and I'm going to get some cadmium yellow on my palette. And what I might do is start off with some darker shades. Okay, I just want to get some of the darks in first. So we dampen my fan brush, some cadmium yellow, some black. I'm going to avoid blue because I think blue will only make this painting too cold. So I'll take a hint of burnt umber. Again, plenty of yellow, hint of burnt umber. And let's see if this works now. This fan brush is quite old, so I don't know if it's going to give me the technique I want. Yeah, you see, it's quite old and it's just being very, very bold at the moment. It's just not doing what it's told. I'm just going to come across and just give the impression of some dark bits of grass here and there. Let's go up here like that. Go over to the edge and just give it a bit of roughage up on the edge, you see? Just like that. Okay, now I'm going to clean that. I don't know if I have an extra fan brush to hand. All my fan brushes are quite worn. This one, I've one here, it's not too bad. I might try this. This is a little softer. I'll try this. I'll try some brighter colour on this one. Let me dampen that and take some cadmium yellow, little burnt sienna, and some Naples yellow. Maybe a hint of white. Now I do want to keep it in the green side, so a little bit more of the yellow, okay? Because bear in mind, this is going to start mixing with the colour already on the canvas. So I'm allowing for that fact as well. Let me just start popping some lights off my fan brush here and there. And I'm going to do the flicking technique just by flicking it upwards. Okay? Just creating different little mounds of grass. And I'll put a little bit of light over here as well. And I'll push a little bit of light back here. Now I'm going to create a tiny bit of a gravel there, okay? A little gravel road, let's say. I'm going to take my my medium brush. I'm going to take some Naples Yellow, a little crimson. I'm going to take lots of white. And I think that's okay. I had a bit of burnt umber on my brush already. So burnt umber, Naples Yellow and crimson. And I'm just going to kind of create a little suggestion of a footpath, okay, just here. I'm just dabbing left and right, and go off and disappear into the grass, okay? And I'm going over my green. That'll pick up the green, that'll help it sort of merge in. So it's a very old footpath, a gravel pathway, and it's kind of merging into the grass here and there, almost disappearing, you see? Let it disappear off around the side of that. Okay, that's not bad. And then I'm going to add some darker colours to that. Burnt umber and a little black. And just for a little bit of definition, just here and there. Okay, you can see, just a little bit. And we can always then kind of add little stones and that kind of thing. Let's add one or two small tiny little stones to this. Should we try it? Okay, let's just try it. Take some burnt umber and let's just pop one or two little stones in here and there. Again, just to add a little bit of detail. And just to give you the impression that it is an actual pathway, okay, a very old pathway. Alright, and then you can, let's say, tiny bit of darkness, just here and there. And a tiny bit of highlight, I think, just to highlight them ever so slightly. And that will just bring them to life a little. Okay? Okay, tiniest little bit. Now, I want to focus on the cottage, because that's the main focal point of this painting. And I want to really do a nice cottage on this. So let me just think now about colours. Let me have a look at my camera. Have we got enough power? We have plenty of power. We have a good bit of power left yet. I'll go with a smaller brush, small flat brush, medium stubby, we'll say. Let me give it a good clean. And I'm going to use a nice warm colour for the roof, okay? The sun is really hitting this, really brightening it up. So I can see burnt sienna. Let's mix a good bit of this. I can see Naples Yellow. I'm just going to try it and see. It's like an old rusty roof, but the sun is hitting it, so it's very bright. Let me try that just for now. I might take a touch of that purple. I'm going to try a touch of that purple in there just to warm it slightly, okay? Make it slightly darker, but it cools it ever so slightly as well. Let me just go along with that colour and paint this roof, okay? Now, if you're worried about the colour mixing for this, you can simply just use a dark brown with some black mixed in. That would work quite well also. So don't be worried about trying to get exactly the same colours that I have here. A dark roof will work just as well. So always paint your roof brush strokes in the direction of the roof, okay? So it gives you the impression of the roof coming this way. If you paint it like this, it's just not going to be believable. Do you understand? And I'm going to take some more of that purple, and then with a hint of black, I'm going to add a little shadow where there's a little tree. See, softening it through, just like that, okay? And then a bit more black, a hint of cobalt blue, just to give a nice purpley deep kind of a shadow just in where the tree starts to fizzle out, okay? Now I'm going to take a hint more of that purple with blue and just add a hint of that here and there. I think a bit of blue and purple will make a big difference. Would you agree? So you see I'm pulling all the lines down in the same direction as the roof. Isn't that lovely? Next, I'm going to take some nice bright colours. With my pointy brush, I think I'll take some Naples Yellow, and I think I'll take a hint of sienna. And I think I'll just start lightening ever so slightly with that, just softening it through here and there. It's a kind of a corrugated iron roof, okay? So the lines will always go this way, in this direction. Now I've taken a touch of cadmium yellow as well, just to help give it more of a glow. Does that make sense? And then down here, a little bit more cadmium yellow. Like that. And then maybe a couple with burnt umber and black. One or two, especially in the dark area. And you could even come down slightly, even just one or two on the way out, okay? Now I think that'll do fine for a little roof, okay? Now I'm going to go back to my big brush, and I'm going to put a nice big tree, well, not a tree, but a very big bush sticking out of that roof. Isn't that just lovely? It really adds to the authenticity of the cottage, doesn't it? So I'm going to start where we started the black, and just a little bit like that, okay? Not too much. Then I'm going to take a smaller brush and go right in there to some cadmium yellow with a hint of cadmium red. And a hint of Naples yellow as well. And I'm going to give that some light. Just a little. So what you can see in this landscape is we have a cool sky on this side, a warm sky on this side, but then we have a warm foreground here. So it balances the two out, if that makes sense, doesn't it? It balances them out lovely. So it just makes for a nice composition. I'm going to take a little bit of cadmium yellow with sienna, and I'm just going to warm that again ever so slightly, okay? Perhaps a piece up there, It seems to be sort of dancing around on top of the roof, doesn't it? And I might even darken behind that slightly as well, with some black, okay? Very dark colour. There we go. Now also I want to lighten with some cadmium yellow, a little burnt sienna. I just want to add a little bit of light to the roof, okay? Just a little bit more warmth here and there. And I'll use some of that purple with the blue with a hint of crimson and give it a little bit more depth in the shadows, okay? Just make it that little bit stronger. That's not bad now, is it? That will work for me. Moving on to the front of the cottage. I'll use a nice flat brush for this, and it's a very similar colour. Let's see, we have some Naples Yellow with a little cadmium yellow, and we have a little burnt sienna in there. Again, a nice warm colour. I'll take a hint of crimson actually. I think I'll try a hint of crimson with some cadmium yellow and some white. Very bright colour. Let's fill that in. Okay, like that. And then what I'm going to do is take a small brush, small pointy brush. I want to create the illusion of some little bits of brickwork and stuff like that on the front of this house. So I'm going to take some white with cadmium yellow and just pop the impression of a few bright little bits of stone here and there on the front of that building. Look, and this will help just kind of bring it alive. And I might even use some darker, slightly darker colours, this warm pinky brown for instance, and pop a few of those in. Particularly towards the bottom where it gets quite kind of dirty where it meets the grass. So I'm even going to soften some of them up into the cottage, because I want this to look really old. It's a really old, dirty kind of cottage. It's well used, as they say. Alright. I'm going to put a hint of brown just under the roof, okay, just here and there. It helps just separate the roof from the front wall, that's all. It just acts as a nice separation. Little bit, just here and there. You see? And then I'm going to paint the windows. I'm just going to take a simple black for the two windows. So we've one window, let's say around here. And follow the angle, okay? Follow the same angles of the top and the bottom. See that? And another small one around here. I'm just going to dirty it up just a touch, okay? Just a tiny touch. We have two lighter stones over these windows. I'm going to pop those in. And then one or two as it goes off, okay? Just ever so slightly, ever so slightly. Now we're coming on quite nicely, aren't we? I'm going to take a dark green and just pop a little bit of dark green here and there, just to sit that down a little bit more. And we'll move on then to the back of the cottage. Right, the back. I'm going to start with, let me see now, how are we doing for time? We're doing good for time actually, yeah, it's doing quite nicely. Right, flat brush, I'm going to start, it's very difficult to work out colours like this. I'm going to go with a nice, kind of a grey purple perhaps. Let me try it first. Let's take some cobalt blue with some crimson, a little black, then a hint of white. So I'm going to just start with that colour and then I'm going to add to it, okay? A bit more blue, tiny hint of black. So I go with that and then I can add lights and darks to this, okay? And it's a nice thin colour, nice thin watery colour. Then I'm going to start adding burnt umber to this with a little black. Pull that all the way down there, just like that. You can see I'm being very messy with my brush, okay? You don't have to be too particular with this. This is just the beginning. So just very roughly, soften those together. And then what I'm going to do is, okay, I'm going to get a brush, a small round brush. Even a worn one will do absolutely fine. Something like this, okay? Or even a small flat brush if you like. I'm then going to start adding some lights and darks to this. I'm going to take some white. I'll take a hint of cobalt blue, hint of crimson. Now really tiny amounts of these, okay? So I'm still staying in the blue side. Very, very soft, bright mauve. And I'm just going to start adding the impression of some bricks. So we're going to start lightening the purple then, you see, with all of this. Suggesting bricks, bits of stonework, bits of brickwork, all that kind of stuff, okay? It's very messy, you see. Just softening that through. And I'm not going to cover the entire thing with all of this, okay? It's just, you can see little lights and darks here and there. I'm just holding the brush on its side, dabbing a few colours, and it's all mixing together then, you see, creating different shapes and hues. I'm going to go along the edge just to rough it up a little, so it's not a definite line then, you see. And then, okay, let's change. I'll take some Naples Yellow, and I'll take a little crimson, and I'll take a little hint of burnt umber. So now we have some slight warmer colours going through, and I'm picking up tones from this side and transferring them to the back as well, okay? And you can see just kind of sort of mixing it all together, but still keeping the dabs the same. Okay? Some big, some small. Oh, let me just stand back for a moment and take a look at this. I'm going to then start darkening this, you see. I'm going to start taking some burnt umber with some black, okay? And then I'm going to take a hint of cadmium red just to keep it warm. And then from the top down, look, I'm going to just start darkening here and there, especially the eave here, okay, just where it casts a bit of a shadow. And then I'm going to start bringing that down either side. So you can see we kind of painted over most of the purple that we used first, but as an undercoat it works well, mixing with all of these. So it gets nice and dark, doesn't it, all the way along here. A few here and there down towards the bottom. Couple of big ones, couple of small ones. Then I'm going to go with some black. Okay, nice dark colour. Let's give this some nice dark shadows here and there. And I'm not covering the entire with the same colour. I'm just kind of going in little patches, little clumps here and there. You see? Now isn't that lovely? That's coming on quite nicely, I must say. Then I'm going to take some white with a little cobalt blue. And I'm going to add that lighter colour here and there. And what that does is, it helps to give your shadows some luminosity, okay? It kind of brightens up the shadow area without, going overboard. Does that make sense? Take a bit more white. Create some lighter stones here and there. And even one or two on that side as well, just to tie the two sides together. Does that make sense? Now I'm going to take some burnt umber with some cadmium red, and I'm just going to add a little touch of warmth as well. Then I'm going to take some black on its own, and I'm going to just drag some black here and there, just like so. Then I take a small pointy brush. I'm going to get some of this nice warm colour, and imagine that roof is coming down. Now I know we have a chimney breast. I'm going to do that as well, don't worry. Okay, I haven't forgotten about that. And I'm going to put some Naples Yellow around the side of this one here, as if there's bits of grass or something growing along the edge of this, okay? Perhaps a little on that side as well. Alright, it just kind of makes it that bit more natural. Then I'm going to do the chimney breast. The chimney breast is very simple. It's just, I'd say Naples Yellow. Let's paint the first front of it here. And then we'll paint the shadow side, very similar to all of this. So a bit of black and a bit of brown. And paint in the shadow side of that. And add a touch of little bits of stones on that as well, because it's quite bright, isn't it? Take a little Naples Yellow, perhaps pop a little Naples Yellow through just here and there. And then a little piece on top. So you can see now I'm keeping this nice and simple for you. Just nice and simple. With a nice rich reddy brown pot on the very top of the roof, okay? And I'll give that a little bit of highlight as well, with some Naples Yellow. So, how's this looking? Next, I'm going to put a nice bush behind here. We have a nice dark bush here, don't we? I'm going to try some black with lots of cadmium yellow. And with all that on your brush, load it up. Just going to simply go like this, okay? Bring it across, let it soften out into the grass back there. Then I'm going to clean it. As you can see now, I'm just keeping all this nice and simple. I'm going to clean it and go right into some rich cadmium yellow. There's already a bit of green on my brush, so this bright cadmium yellow, and I'm going to give this some nice highlight. Watch now, watch how easy this is. Okay, just with the corner of the brush, a little bit of light. We can do the same then, bringing it across here and there just to add a little bit of brightness and richness. Across our painting, okay? You see, it just kind of brightens things up a little bit, doesn't it? I think it really helps. So my friends, we are getting there, I must say. I'm going to just add a little touch of detail to some of, let me just take some of this brown colour here. Little touch just to some of this, just to dim it down ever so slightly. It seems a little bit bright, doesn't it? So just a little bit here and there on the roof. I'm going to give the roof a little bit more light, just a little bit more of an impact, just on this side here. And I'm going to lighten some of the bushes on top of that roof as well, just with some cadmium yellow. Okay, just like that. I might take a hint of burnt sienna as well, add a touch of burnt sienna through there, and just rough up the tip of the roof. And perhaps a touch of burnt sienna around here as well, just to transfer some of the colours across the painting, okay? Now I'm very, very happy with that. I think all this painting needs is a little bird in the sky. Where should we go with the bird? I leave that side, so I maybe go, maybe just up here. A little bird out in the sky. And I think that's all we need. Yeah? I think I've achieved what I wanted to get from this painting. I'm going to take a little bit of black and blue and just pop a little black and blue in there just to strengthen those shadows just a little bit, okay? And I think perhaps as well, just one last thing, pop a little stick or something against the wall, just to give it some character, okay? It may not be a stick, maybe it's a ladder. Then a tiny touch of shadow being cast from that. And there we are, my friends. I think this is job done. Yeah, I'm very happy with that. Let me zoom in and show you what we have created today. A nice simple landscape using easy techniques. Isn't that just wonderful? We go right into this cottage now so you can see. And you can see how I created the stonework just by simply dabbing a little round brush on its edge. That's all I did, okay? Now I know the yellow on the front of that cottage may look a little bit luminous. I think that's just the exposure on the camera. Tends to go a bit bright. And look at the wonderful trees we created as well. Very, very simply. Okay? And you can see how that rough brush gives a beautiful effect. Isn't that lovely? A simple rough brush. Isn't that lovely? And that bush there is particularly nice as well. Just done with a very rough brush, dabbed very gently. And there we are, my friends. And a few little pebbles here and there help. So that's it. And my friends, thank you so much. Let me turn the camera here. I hope the lighting is okay. It's not too bad. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. Oh, fix this. That's been absolutely brilliant. I'm very happy with this. I'll just paint around the sides of the canvas with a little bit of colour just to finish it off, but I think that's a really nice landscape. I hope you've got some kind of hints and tips from it. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this week's lesson. I'll be back in about 2 weeks with another one, okay? I'm just focusing on Patreon. I want to get a lot of stuff done for Patreon. And really going back to basics. Simple trees, simple grass texture, you know, painting little houses, that kind of stuff. So pop over and take a look if you want to see what we're doing over there. And thank you very much for your support. I really appreciate that. Let me know what you think. Send me your impressions of this painting if you're doing it, if you're following me along. I'd love to see how you're getting on. Do subscribe, more importantly, and just keep it simple, have a bit of fun, okay? Try not to get bogged down with little details too much. Just kind of paint it bit by bit. Just concentrate on section by section, all right? And remember, bring your colours together on the canvas to complement the painting. So don't have too many cool colours against too many warm colours. Try and integrate the colours across your canvas, all right, as you go. Just little hints. That's probably my tip that I could give you. So go on, have a bit of fun with that, and I'll see you again very soon. Thank you so much for joining, and God bless.